Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me.
In a world bathed in the brilliance of the holy light, humanity had lived under the rule of the church for as long as anyone could remember. The church's towering cathedrals dotted every city, and its teachings were etched into the hearts of every man, woman, and child. The holy light was law, justice, and truth. To defy it was unthinkable. And so, the people lived, guided by the radiant beams that fell from the heavens, their faith unshakable. Among them was Cyril, a young light inquisitor, sworn to uphold the teachings of the church and punish those who strayed from its path. She had trained for years, mastering both combat and the divine arts. Her purpose was clear, her duty unquestionable. The holy light was pure, and any who dared question it were agents of darkness. That was the truth she had been taught, the truth she believed in. But as the sun set on yet another mission, Cyril found herself standing over a group of villagers accused of heresy, her hand trembling on the hilt of her sword. The village was small, a forgotten place on the edge of civilization, where whispers of rebellion had reached the ears of the church. Cyril and her fellow inquisitors had been dispatched to quell the uprising, to root out the heretics who dared challenge the holy light's authority. It was a routine mission, or so it had seemed. But as Cyril looked into the eyes of the villagers, saw their fear, their desperation, something inside her shifted. They were not the vile heretics she had expected. There was no malice in their eyes, no signs of darkness. They were people, simple and afraid. And as she watched them cower before her, Cyril couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her fellow inquisitors had already begun their work, burning books and symbols they deemed blasphemous. The village elder, an old man with weathered skin and a voice roughened by age, stepped forward, pleading for mercy. "Please," he rasped, his voice cracking with desperation. "We are not enemies of the light. We seek only to live in peace." Cyril's superior, Inquisitor Corin, sneered at the old man. "Peace? There is no peace outside the light. You and your people have harbored heretical beliefs. The punishment for such blasphemy is death." Cyril had always admired Corin for his strength and unwavering faith. He was a towering figure, both physically and in his devotion to the holy light. But now, as she listened to him condemn these people without hesitation, without a shred of doubt, she felt a chill run down her spine. "Corin," she said, her voice uncertain for the first time in years. "These people. They don't seem like heretics. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." Corin's eyes narrowed as he turned to face her. "Do not question the will of the holy light, Cyril. These people have been judged. It is not our place to question their fate." Cyril's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment she had trained for her entire life to enforce the will of the holy light. But now, standing on the precipice of that duty, she felt a flicker of doubt. She had always believed the light to be pure, just, and true. Yet here, in this forgotten village, something felt deeply wrong. The old man, sensing her hesitation, took a step closer. "Inquisitor," he said softly, "not all that glows is light." His words hung in the air like a heavy mist, swirling around her mind. Before she could respond, Corin barked an order to the other inquisitors. "Burn the village. Leave no trace of their heresy." Cyril's breath caught in her throat. The other inquisitors moved swiftly, setting fire to the homes, the fields, everything. Flames licked the sky, casting a harsh orange glow over the scene. The villagers screamed, scattering in all directions as their lives went up in smoke. Cyril stood frozen, her mind racing. This was wrong. It had to be. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the chaos. It was the old man, his grip surprisingly strong for someone of his age. "You must leave this place," he whispered urgently. "There are things you do not understand. The holy light. It is not what you think." Before she could protest, he thrust a small, weathered book into her hands. "Take this. It will show you the truth." Cyril hesitated, but the look in the old man's eyes convinced her to take the book. He disappeared into the smoke, leaving her standing alone in the midst of the burning village. She glanced down at the book, its cover worn and faded. She knew that possessing such a text was forbidden, a crime punishable by death. But something inside her compelled her to keep it. The screams of the villagers filled her ears as she tucked the book into her cloak and turned to leave. Corin's voice called out to her, but she ignored it, her feet carrying her away from the flames, away from the destruction. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. For the first time in her life, Cyril was running from the holy light. The days that followed were a blur. Cyril moved from village to village, staying one step ahead of the inquisitors who hunted her. She knew it wouldn't be long before they caught up to her, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not until she understood what was happening. She spent every night poring over the book the old man had given her. It was filled with ancient texts, writings that spoke of a time before the Holy Light Church ruled the world. According to the book, the Holy Light wasn't a divine force, as the Church claimed. It was something else entirely, an ancient power that had been discovered and harnessed by the Church's founders. They had used it to control the people, to enforce their rule and ensure their dominance. The true nature of the light had been hidden from the world, buried beneath centuries of lies. Cyril's hands trembled as she read the words. Everything she had been taught, everything she had believed, was a lie. The holy light was not the beacon of justice and purity she had devoted her life to. It was a tool of control, wielded by those in power to maintain their grip on society. The realization left her feeling hollow, as though the very ground beneath her feet had been ripped away. She had dedicated her entire life to upholding the teachings of the holy light, to enforcing its will without question. And now, she was left questioning everything. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she had seen in the villages of the people who had been labeled as heretics, the innocent lives destroyed in the name of the light. How many had she condemned to death without ever questioning the truth? How many lives had been lost because she had blindly followed orders? She couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. As the days passed, Cyril's journey led her deeper into the heart of the Resistencia, a network of rebels and scholars who had long been working in secret to uncover the truth about the holy light. She was wary at first, unsure of who she could trust, but as she listened to their stories, heard the accounts of those who had suffered under the Church's rule, she realized that she was not alone in her doubts. One night, as she sat around a campfire with a group of rebels, an older woman named Kale approached her. Kale had once been a priest within the Church, a scholar who had devoted her life to studying the scriptures. But like Cyril, she had discovered the truth about the holy light and had been forced to flee for her life. "I see the same look in your eyes that I had when I first learned the truth," Kale said softly, sitting beside her. "It's a hard thing to come to terms with, isn't it? Everything you thought was real a broken bar, it was all a lie." Cyril nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I don't know what to believe anymore. If the holy light isn't what I thought, then a broken bar what is?" Kale stared into the fire, her expression thoughtful. "The holy light is a powerful force, there's no denying that. But it's not divine. It's been corrupted, twisted by those who seek to control it for their own gain." Cyril frowned. "Then what is the true light? What am I supposed to believe in?" Kale looked at her, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "The true light is inside all of us. It's not something that can be controlled or dictated by a church. It's a force of justice, of truth, but it comes from within. You must find your own path, Cyril. You must decide what the light means to you." Cyril sat in silence, Kale's words echoing in her mind. She had spent her entire life following the will of the Holy Light Church, never once questioning her faith. But now, for the first time, she realized that the path she had been on was not her own. It was time to forge a new one. Cyril couldn't sleep that night. The fire had long since died down, leaving only smoldering embers that glowed faintly in the dark. She lay awake, staring at the sky above, where no stars shone. The oppressive blanket of clouds that covered the land felt symbolic now, a barrier between the world and the truth, just like the church, keeping the people in darkness. Kale's words echoed in her mind, challenging everything she had known. The true light is inside all of us. It was a thought so simple, yet it rattled her deeply. She had spent her entire life believing that the holy light was something external, a force to be followed and worshipped, something controlled by the church. But now she was beginning to understand that the light wasn't something that could be harnessed or manipulated for power. It was far more complex than that. Sleep eventually came, but it was restless. She dreamed of the burning village, the screams of the people as their homes went up in flames. And then, the old man's voice, cutting through the chaos, repeating those haunting words, "Not all that glows is light." When Sarah woke the next morning, the resistance camp was already bustling with activity. Kale was speaking to the other rebels, outlining their next steps, but Cyril's mind was elsewhere. She had made her decision. It was time to take action. She sought out Kale after breakfast, finding her seated near the edge of the camp, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something far beyond sight. Cyril approached quietly, but Kale seemed to sense her presence before she spoke. "You've made up your mind," Kale said without turning, her voice steady. "I have," Cyril replied, standing beside her. "I can't hide in the shadows anymore. I need to confront the church, find the source of the light, and expose the truth. If what you say is true, that the light comes from within, then it's time to show the world that it doesn't belong to the church." Kale nodded, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "It won't be easy. They will come after you with everything they have. The church doesn't take kindly to rebels, especially not one of their own." Cyril squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. "I've faced them before. I'll face them again." Kale regarded her for a long moment, then placed a hand on Cyril's shoulder. "Then you should know where to start. The church's greatest secret is hidden within the grand temple of the holy light. It's a place only the highest ranking officials are allowed to enter. If you can get inside, you'll find the source of the light and the truth." Cyril's pulse quickened at the mention of the Grand Temple. It was the heart of the church's power, a towering monument that had loomed over her life since she could remember. She had never been inside, but she had always felt its pull. Now, it seemed, her journey was destined to end where it had all begun. "I'll go," she said firmly. "But I won't go alone." Kale smiled, a small, sad smile. "You'll have allies. We all believe in the true light, and we'll support you however we can. But be careful, Cyril. The church won't let you get close without a fight." The journey to the Grand Temple was fraught with danger. The church's forces were everywhere, hunting for Cyril and any other rebels who dared to oppose their rule. But Cyril and her companions moved swiftly, avoiding detection as they traveled across the lands. Along the way, they gathered more support as small groups of villagers and townspeople who had long harbored doubts about the church and its teachings. The whispers of rebellion grew louder with each passing day. By the time they reached the outskirts of the capital city, Cyril's group had grown into a small army. They weren't soldiers, but they were people with a cause, united by the desire to see the truth revealed. Cyril stood at the front, her eyes fixed on the towering spires of the Grand Temple in the distance. This was it, the final stand. Under the cover of darkness, they infiltrated the city, slipping through the narrow streets and alleyways that wound through the capital. The church's soldiers patrolled every corner, their shining armor glinting in the torchlight. Cyril's heart raced as they crept closer to the temple. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was what she had been trained for, after all. Though now, her mission was far different from what she had ever imagined. As they approached the temple, Cyril's eyes were drawn to the massive gates that guarded its entrance. The doors were carved from dark stone, etched with intricate symbols of the holy light. They were heavily fortified, with guards posted at every entrance. It would be impossible to storm the temple head-on. "We'll need a distraction," Lyra, the rebel warrior who had been Cyril's closest ally on this journey, whispered as they crouched behind a nearby building. Cyril nodded. "We can't fight them all at once, but if we can split their forces, we might have a chance." Lyra grinned, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "I've got just the thing." Before Cyril could ask what she meant, Lyra was already moving, leading a small group of rebels toward the main gate. Cyril watched from the shadows as Lyra and her team created a commotion, drawing the attention of the guards. The soldiers rushed to the gate, leaving the side entrances unguarded. "This is our chance," Kale murmured, motioning for the rest of the group to follow her toward the side entrance. They moved quickly and quietly, slipping through the shadows until they reached the unguarded door. With a swift motion, Cyril pushed it open, and they slipped inside the temple. The interior of the Grand Temple was unlike anything Cyril had ever seen. The ceilings stretched impossibly high, lined with glowing crystals that bathed the room in a soft, ethereal light. Statues of saints and prophets lined the walls, their eyes cast downward in judgment. But what drew Cyril's attention most was the massive central chamber at the source of the light itself. At the center of the chamber, suspended above a pool of shimmering liquid, was a glowing orb of pure energy. It radiated a blinding white light, so intense that Cyril had to shield her eyes as she approached. This was it, the holy light. But something felt wrong. The closer she got, the more she could feel the energy twisting and writhing, as though it were Alivia and not in a good way. The light wasn't pure, as the church had claimed. It was corrupted, tainted by the hands of those who sought to control it. Cyril took a deep breath, steeling herself. She reached out, her fingers grazing the edge of the orb's light. The moment her skin made contact, a surge of energy shot through her, overwhelming her senses. Images flashed before her eyes, visions of the church's rise to power, of the countless lives destroyed in the name of the holy light. And then, at the center of it all, she saw the truth. The light was not a divine force. It was an ancient energy source, discovered long ago and harnessed by the founders of the church. They had used it to manipulate and control the people, twisting its power to suit their own desires. The truth had been buried beneath layers of doctrine and propaganda, and the light had been corrupted beyond recognition. Cyril's heart pounded in her chest as the visions faded. She staggered back, her mind racing. This was the truth she had been searching for, the truth the church had fought so hard to keep hidden. The holy light was a lie. But before she could react, a voice rang out from behind her. "So, you finally discovered the truth." Cyril spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for her sword. Standing at the entrance to the chamber was Inquisitor Corin, his eyes burning with fury. He had followed her here, just as she had feared. "You've betrayed everything we stand for, Cyril," Corin spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You've turned your back on the holy light. You've turned your back on me." Cyril's grip tightened on her sword, her mind racing. "The light isn't what we thought, Corin. It's been corrupted. The church has been lying to us." Corin's eyes narrowed, and he drew his own sword, the blade glinting in the dim light of the temple. "You've been deceived by darkness, Cyril. And now, you must be cleansed." Cyril's heart pounded in her chest as Corin advanced toward her. This was Ida, the final confrontation. She had once admired Corin, respected him as her mentor and guide. But now, she saw him for what he truly was, another pawn in the church's twisted game. With a fierce cry, Corin lunged at her, his sword slicing through the air. Cyril barely had time to block the blow, her own blade clashing against his with a sharp metallic ring. The force of the strike sent a jolt of pain through her arm, but she gritted her teeth and held her ground. The two inquisitors clashed in a whirlwind of steel, their movements swift and deadly. Cyril's mind raced as she fought, searching for a way to end the battle without killing the man she had once called her ally. But Corin showed no such hesitation. His strikes were brutal, each one,